Okay, hello everyone. My name is Alan Knox, and wanted to do a little presentation for you today on essentially how to stay healthy in your career search. So my name again is Alan Knox. I'm a career consultant here at the University of Texas at Dallas, and assisting me is Bethany Ahoy. She will also be here to take the questions that you type in the chat box on the side, and at times I will talk to her and see if she can has any questions that she needs to relay to me. And if not, then we will keep moving on. Okay, so let's go to our agenda. All right, so we're going to look at a few different things. Top of the list, mindfulness, being essentially mindful of what it is that we're trying to accomplish, whether it's looking for our next career, studying, getting an internship, whatever it is, being cognizant, being in the moment. The second part is self-care. So we have to be able to take care of ourselves essentially in order to be successful really at pretty much anything that we do. And then of course our job search. So touching base on that as far as what we normally do and what we look at to be successful in our job search, especially during some uncertain times that we're in right now. Then maintaining some normalcy in a daily routine. Things are not normal at the moment, but we want to try our best to stay the course, shall we say, and keep things as normal as possible for our success. Then nutrition and consistent sleep-wake cycle. So how is our sleeping? How is our nutrition? How does that affect everything that we do, including our job search and our success? Limiting our social media. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Social media is a big part of pretty much all of our lives at this point. And then giving ourselves a break because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of changes. Okay, next slide, please. So mindfulness, obviously, like I said, during a pandemic, there's a lot of challenges and we're isolating, right? We're keeping to ourselves. So we have to be mindful of what it is that we want to accomplish throughout the day, what it is that we want, how do we want to end our day and be successful? So mindfulness, another way to think of it, is being intentional with our thoughts and our actions. Now that's the definition, but a lot of times that can still be kind of vague. So I like to look at it in terms of how would we not be mindful? What does that look like? Because that is oftentimes what we're running into. So as a result, has anybody ever maybe stress eaten? Found yourself suddenly halfway through a box of Girl Scout cookies, through a box of Thin Mints or something, and you think, I don't even remember eating them. I don't even know what happened. Suddenly I'm halfway through it, or I've finished my lunch and I don't even remember eating it. Well, at that point, we're not being mindful, right? Our body's doing one thing and our mind is doing another. Or maybe we were driving down the road, driving to work, driving to school, and we don't even remember driving. Besides being dangerous, we're not in the moment. And so the reason that that's important is if we're not in the moment, we're not a part of this reality, how successful would we be in our coursework, in our career search, wherever it may be, if we're not 100% focused? And the truth is we're not as successful when we do that. Perhaps maybe you've run into situations where you were unsure if a conversation took place. You thought about it and then maybe you had to touch base with that person and say, hey, so-and-so, did we have this conversation or did I just think about it? And that's a sign that, of course, all these are signs that we're pretty stressed and we're not in the moment. So we really want to pay attention as best we can, listen, live in the moment. And one of the ways that we oftentimes will work on this is through meditation, right? You've probably heard, if you don't do meditation, you've heard people talk about it. It forces ourselves to focus on whatever it is that we are looking at. Maybe it's sitting or standing, maybe it's our breathing, whatever it is, remaining cognizant of that is important. Along those same lines, being mindful is to not multitask. There have been numerous studies that show that multitasking is really doing a lot of things quickly. And other studies showing that when we do things quickly, our percentage of errors increases. So if you ever have maybe a boss or somebody, a manager who says, I need you to multitask. Well, what they're essentially asking you to do is do things really fast and make more errors. So ideally, that's not what we want to do. We want to be in the moment, be mindful, and complete our tasks as needed. And as far as resources, there are resources out there, different apps. There's numerous ones that come up almost daily at this point. Mindful.org, Headspace is an app. There's all different ones, and there's free ones, there's ones that cost more money, but it's definitely a good way to kind of get you more focused so that you can be successful in your career search. Okay, next slide, please. Self-care. So we can see from the slide what it is, but the question is, what exactly is it? What does it look like? So we're going to talk more about this in detail in just a little bit, but wanted to touch on some of the basics. So exercise, movement. It can be difficult, I know right now, because we're perhaps thrown off our routines and we're not exercising like we normally would, but we still have access to walk around the block, get some movement in just in our neighborhood, even if we're not around people. And this is doing a few things. One, it's moving blood through our body, moving cholesterol through our body. It's increasing oxygen and blood to our brains, and then it helps us to think better just by exercising. It also kind of acts as a rebooting, if you will, like we reboot a computer. Well, exercise can reboot your brain, which is essential, and it's important when we are looking for a new career, when we are studying, whatever it is that we're doing, to have that mental break. So exercise really allows for that. The next aspect is eating healthy. So good food is going to give us energy and help us to complete our tasks. Bad food, junk food, sugar, things like that will decrease our energy and give us oftentimes increased depression. So being very cognizant of what kind of food we're bringing into the house. If we feel like we stress eat on certain foods, maybe it's a good time not to bring them in the house so we can remain focused a bit more. Then on the far left, you see they're on the phone, so socialization. So I know that many of us are, again, isolated at this point, but it's still important that we reach out and we connect with other people, that we don't stay completely isolated, especially people who maybe are on this call and they're very extroverted. They like to talk to a lot of people. They have a lot of activities in their life. If that's the case, it's going to be really important that you still try your best to maintain that. Even people who are introverted are going to still need to reach out and stay in contact with other people. I'm going to check in at this point. Any questions in the chat room?
None thus far, but I have a question.
Okay.
So what are some ways that I'm an extrovert for sure. So I know some of our students are as well. What are some different ways that we can get together, maybe with friends online or different things we could do since we can't see people face to face right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So obviously, a lot of people have cell phones. You can do Skyping, a virtual chat. I've seen some people recently who've gotten together, a group of moms who actually got together in their cars, their SUVs, went to a parking lot, and were all kind of in a big circle with their SUVs, roughly 10 feet apart. And they all got together to kind of do calisthenics and talk, but at a safe distance. And it kind of got them out of the house. So anything like that, texting, phone calls, FaceTime, anything like that to kind of reach out. But that's a good question. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, your job search. So same rules apply, but I always like to start out by just kind of saying and reminding people, if they didn't know, finding a job is really a full-time job. in itself. And I know for a lot of students, they hate to hear that because they're already pretty taxed as far as their time. They're going to school full time, they're working, they're in an internship. Now they're trying to find a job. There's not enough hours in the day. And I get that for sure. But to the best of your ability, keeping in mind, it is a full-time job trying to find employment or an internship, whatever it may be. So a few things need to take place. Organization as usual, maybe more so now. So when you find these different jobs that you're applying for, making sure that you've figured out a way to take a snapshot or keep the job description. Maybe have a job folder for each position that you apply for that has the job description as well as your customized resume, so that when you get that phone call and you get to have the interview, you want to know exactly what that job was for, what they were requesting, as well as what resume you gave them, because if at all possible, hopefully you are customizing them just a little bit. The other thing is to keep a list of companies. So you can't investigate all the companies maybe right now as you're thinking about them, but as you think of different companies that you want to investigate, because that's part of it, we need to investigate these companies, put them on a list, right? All of a sudden, sometimes the floodgates open and you think of half a dozen companies, write them down. Then when you have time, go back and one by one, investigate those companies and find out about them. If you don't make that list, what'll happen is later on, you'll say, okay, I've got time to investigate some companies. Now let me think. I know I had some good ideas. What were they? And I can't remember. But if you can at least keep that list, it'll give you something to look back on. Then the other part of your job search, and this is going to be probably more important than ever, and that's networking. Basically getting a job or an internship, 80 to 90% come from networking. Who you know, who have you reached out to, who are you linked with in LinkedIn. It can also be, in a great way, current classmates or previous classmates. Maybe you did an assignment, some sort of application with some classmates, and you had a presentation, and now it's been a year or so, and you knew that they graduated. Well, you could reach out to them if you still have their number and just say, hey, it's been a while, just checking in. Have you graduated? Are you interning anywhere? You know, just a couple questions, and they might say, yes, I'm at such and such place. Well, if so, then my next question is, do you like it? Are they hiring? Are they looking for interns? I'm still looking. And then that person might say, I think they are, send me your resume, and then they can get it right to the hiring manager. So that kind of networking is, like I said, 80 to 90% of jobs come through that, which is obviously much better odds than just simply applying in all the normal places that we would, Indeed and Handshake and such. Next slide, please.
And I do have a question.
Yes.
So a student is asking, I'm applying for more jobs, and since people aren't in the offices and I can't call to follow up, does that mean I should email them even more than I already was? Or do I need to just, is there a certain amount of time or a limit to how much I need to be following up with these employers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's it's kind of a gray area. If we email too much, we could be bothering them, right? And we don't want to do that, but yet we want to be able to follow up. So if you apply and you know that the job is still posted, it might be a while before they're going to get back to you. I might, within a few days or a week, just send an email. Maybe then if that job is still posted a month later, reach out again. But they're trying to hire for the position, so I would not reach out a whole lot. Bethany, any other questions?
No, I think I want to add on top of that is I think in this time it's real easy for our anxiety to get up high. So you feel like maybe if I email them even more or message them on LinkedIn even more, it will help. And just trying to keep in mind that I think everybody's kind of in this place of anxiety, and you don't want that other person to kind of be off put if you are continually following up on a daily basis to the point where, it might be a turnoff to the employer. So definitely just keep in mind that everyone's got a lot going on, and just kind of exactly what Alan said with, just kind of routinely following up here and there, but just know that everyone has a lot going on.
Yeah, thank you, Bethany. That's a good point. It's good to level set with that. That's part of what this whole presentation is about, is kind of getting all on the same page. So great question. Okay, hobbies. So has anybody heard the quote? And it's an old quote, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So he's dull because he works all the time, right? He's bored, he's boring as a result. And this is kind of difficult because I know at UTD we have a lot of driven students and they're working really hard, and that's good, that's really good. But we cannot neglect our hobbies. Much like sleeping and exercise reboots our brain, socialization, so do hobbies, and we cannot completely neglect that. So we need to still have fun activities in our life and look for things that are going to give us that sense of fun. Essentially a balance. I know for a lot of college students, they're out of balance, right? They're working really hard, they're studying really hard. But if you can carve out any time to have some fun and break that routine, it's really important. Again, you can reach a saturation point, and there reaches a point during that where you're not as productive. You're not as good with job searches. And then if you get a call for an interview and you haven't had that break, your prefrontal cortex, your brain is not operating as it normally would. So you're not able to give it your best. And that's essentially what we're trying to do. So it's counterintuitive to say, take a break and have some fun, do a hobby, do something with friends, even online, but it's essential. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so we've spoken about this a little bit, but I still want to touch on it from a little different direction. So nutrition and our sleep-wake schedule, essentially. So we've spoken about foods giving you energy, and those foods will also assist in helping you to sleep well or sleep poorly. So as an example, maybe you would drink alcohol, and a lot of people say, well, that kind of makes them sleepy. They go to sleep that way. But it's actually disruptive to our sleep pattern. It's turning to sugar, and that sugar is not really helping our sleep at all. So being really cognizant of what we're eating will also help us with our sleep, and then maintaining a schedule. So this is a bit tricky, I know, for a lot of college students because their schedule is all over the place, but working at it as best we can. First of all, from the standpoint that for adults 18 to 25, we know that basically 7 to 9 hours of sleep a day is good, right? So you're probably somewhere in there. Then we also know that at least a minimum of 6 hours a day of sleep is what's required so that we can process the events of that day. And that's important because if we're working hard and we're studying and we're learning and we're reading, and then we don't sleep enough, our brain's not fully processing. It's like it's not fully storing that information. And the last thing you want to do is get into an exam and just kind of blank. You can't remember what it is that you studied. I know some people will pull all-nighters and they'll stay up and they'll study and then they'll take the exam, and sometimes that works. Sometimes it works very terribly. It doesn't work at all. So essentially, getting at least that 6 hours. Along those lines, it is trying to be in a consistent time that you would go to sleep and a consistent time that you would wake up, if at all possible. That'll make things a little bit easier. Otherwise, a lot of times we have trouble getting to sleep or staying asleep when we vary our times radically. But again, I know with college students, sometimes you're up till 2 in the morning studying, and then the next day you are scheduled to sleep in because you've got a big day. So you'll have to kind of just do your best and pay attention. Other people will have a good schedule throughout the week and they don't get much sleep, and then they crash on the weekends. And that happens as well, but then that becomes part of your pattern to get you caught up so that you're ready for Monday again. So essentially just being aware of it, that it's a requirement, you know, for your brain. You need this, your body needs this, so do your best not to neglect it. We call it really sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene. It's just it's one of the foundations that help us be successful. Along those lines, the amount of TV and that we would watch. So some people will say they watch TV before they go to sleep, and they've always done that, and that works for them, and that's fine. But for those that don't, it can be rather disruptive. So when we study brain waves of people, and right before they go to sleep, as they're watching TV, the alpha waves in the brain look as if they're half asleep, but they're actually awake. So they're kind of tricking their body, and that can be a problem if then all of a sudden you say, okay, it's about time for bed. You get up, you do a few things, turn off the TV, go back to bed. Now you're probably awake. So we want to, if at all possible, if we're going to watch TV, do it at an earlier point. When we're getting in bed, that's the time that we're going to read and just kind of rest. And it helps our brain to decompress, as opposed to watching a TV show, watching a movie. We're actually putting more information into our brain that we then have to process. And processing it is going to take place while we're asleep or through dreams, something like that. So we want to really do our best to limit that. Any questions or comments in the chat box?
None right now.
Okay. All right, next slide, please. All right, social media, or essentially limiting our social media. So we're in an informational age, and information is power, definitely is. And this is an all-time high, I think, as to when we want to be watching the news and finding out the latest, knowing what we should or shouldn't do to be safe and to essentially stay alive, quite possibly. But we don't want to push information gathering to the point where we're just terrified and we're stuck. We want to gather news and then move on with the rest of our day. So the best way oftentimes is to kind of set aside time, maybe to watch the news or read the news, whatever it is that you need to do for an hour, half an hour, whatever it is that's suitable for you, and then move on to something else. Kind of having that balance, so to speak. I know that maybe some of you will have parents or grandparents that are retired and that TV's on all day and they're watching CNN or Fox or whatever it is all day. And even for them, that's bad. It's really bad. You really don't want to do that. It's not good for our brains. It's not good for our psyche. There's a balance that we need to strike. So, jumping in, watching TV, watching the news, Facebook, any kind of social media, that's great, staying connected, but we really don't want to be on Facebook all day. First of all, we have to look at the content that's on there. Right? People aren't typically posting bad days on Facebook. They're typically not posting, well, today was a terrible day and I had a flat tire and broke up with my boyfriend or whatever it is. They're typically showing something like, oh, I was in Aspen and we were skiing at the top of the mountain. Look at this picture. They're showing you good things. And that's good. It's just when we sit there and we watch all these people who seem to have this fabulous life, who are doing all these great things at a time when I'm stuck in maybe my apartment in Richardson and self-isolating, it can make me feel kind of depressed by comparison, so you'll increase your depression and your anxiety just by having too much social media time. Essentially, we compare ourselves in that situation to other people. And there have been studies about this. First of all, when we compare ourselves upward, there's more depression, okay? People are more unhappy. So what I mean by upward is maybe you're watching the Kardashians on TV, right? I know that's kind of humorous, but maybe you are and you're saying, look, these people have millions of dollars. They've got Lear jets. they've got fancy cars, they don't have to work. I mean, they've got it made. And then you look at your life and you think, I don't have anything by comparison, right? And people in that situation, when we study them, they're 5 times more unhappy as a result. Now, on the contrary, on the other side of that, we can look towards putting things in more perspective, kind of being grateful, if you will. And when people look down, if you will, I hate that terminology, but if we look in terms of maybe I'm at home studying and I'm safe, and I would say to myself, you know what, at least I'm not one of the essential workers. At least I'm not a doctor or a nurse or someone like that working in a hospital where my colleagues are dying or getting sick, or I'm dealing with death every day. And I'm worried because I don't have the proper attire on to keep myself safe. Well, by comparison, you know what, turns out I'm pretty lucky. This may not be exciting sitting here in my apartment, but I feel statistically 5 times happier. So we want to be cognizant in the end of how much we compare ourselves to others, how much time we spend on social media. Same thing again with TV, even casual programs that are for fun. Certain ones are on rotation if you're watching TV, old episodes of Friends perhaps. They've got a really great life on that show. I mean, they dress in the great clothes for the time. They're all really attractive people. They live in amazing apartments in Manhattan that most people can't afford, even with very little money. They get to hang out at the coffee shop all day, and they always get the best seats. You know, everything really seems to be great for them. And we just need to keep in context that that's not real. You know, that's not reality. So we can watch it for fun, but we don't want to compare ourselves to them, because that type of depression, how is that going to help us in getting our next internship, our next job, our next career going? It's not, it's actually hurting us. So keep it in context for what it is. Any questions or comments currently, Bethany?
Yes, one of the comments is it's very easy to get sucked into the news and feel like that you're missing out or missing something important if you don't have it on or have access to it all the time. So I'll let you speak to that, Alan, but I think a lot of us can probably relate to that, feeling like you're going to miss out if you're not constantly attached to social media or the news.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it's almost it's a fear, right? We get really used to it, and we've increased it now. I admit I've increased it now. I watch the news in the morning and in the evening, whereas before I didn't do that. So I would still say that, yeah, we can check in, and if you want to check in the middle of the day, that's fine. It's just we don't want to be reading it all day, looking at it all day, because it's distracting. It's keeping us from what we want to do. So we still want to limit that. But good question and good statement for sure. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, our daily routine. So we've touched on this in the other slides, but let's kind of try and bring it all together. Let's look at how this might look. So we've spoken about a sleep-wake cycle, sleep hygiene, our weekends, how they might look different than during the week, being really cognizant of that. So when I say a daily routine, I don't mean you have to have everything scheduled. Now, certain things you will have scheduled. You've got class at a certain time, a class from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then a class from 2 to 3 or whatever it is. That's kind of set in stone, and you know how long you have to take to get there, or in this case, log into your computer. But then you've got other activities that need to take place. You're studying for classes, studying for exams, reading for those classes, hopefully reading for fun. Depends on what kind of student you are. Maybe you're in math classes. I know when I was getting my first business degree, I had to practice math. It was not something that came natural to me. So I was in the math lab studying calculus for hours every weekend, and I had that scheduled into my routine. Other aspects, of course, scheduling in time to eat, prepare your food, exercise, calling friends, making kind of a list a lot of times I think is a great way to do it, and say, here are the things that I want to do today. And there are certain things that have to take place at certain times, and others I'm flexible with. So kind of having that list, and keeping in mind we don't have to map out every minute, because then that can be kind of depressing if you feel like every minute is accounted for. Being flexible, we're not machines, but being cognizant of everything that we want to accomplish so that we can do our best to not say at the end of the day, oh boy, the day got away from me and I don't even know what I did today. I didn't accomplish anything. We want to have that list of activities. For some people, I know myself, I like to, just a feeling of accomplishment, I will start to write down, especially if I'm overloaded, if I'm overwhelmed, what are all the things I need to get to in no particular order. And a lot of times I'll do it on paper. And then I can put a line through it when I've completed it. And sometimes if there's something that I completed that I didn't even have on the list, I'll write it down just so that I can put a line through it. And it gives me that sense of accomplishment. And at the end of the day, even if I think, I don't know that I got much accomplished, I can look at that list and I can realize, I actually did quite a bit. So having a routine as best we can and getting that sense of accomplishment is going to be very, very important. Okay, next slide. And before we get into this last slide or close to the end, any comments in the chat room?
None right now.
Okay, great. So giving yourself a break. I'm talking about a lot of different topics, and for a lot of people, they're aware of them, or they're reminded of them, or they're new. But it can feel like overload. Here's this guy telling me more than I need to do. So we want to give ourselves a break, and realize that we're going to try to do the best that we can. We are in the middle of a serious pandemic, and it's not easy. It's a change. It's a huge change from what we were used to. The whole world has changed, and most people don't like change. And a lot of us struggle a lot with it. And even though now it's been a few weeks, it's still new. This is still really different. So cut yourself some slack. Give yourself a break. You're doing the best that you can. And by the way, if you reach out to some of your friends and ask them, they might tell you the same thing, that they're kind of struggling with it as well. And then things that would make that worse would be the isolation and uncertainty. Well, that's where we're at right now, right? We're, for the most part, isolating ourselves or staying away from other people, and things are uncertain. What's the job market going to be like? How easy can I get an internship? What's the stock market going to be? Will companies be hiring? How long will this take? So there is that uncertainty, but nothing lasts forever. Things do change, whether it's really good or really bad, it will change and it will move on. So keeping that in our mind, giving ourselves a break, reaching out to friends and acquaintances to stay in contact, however means we can do that. And just remembering that we have a lot on our plates. I speak with a lot of students at the University Career Center, and you guys are busy. You're really busy. There's a lot that you're handling. So remembering that this also isn't forever. Eventually you will finish school and you will move on, and you will have your job, whatever it is you're doing, and it will be different than it is right now. And that might seem like a long ways away, but it will happen. So essentially do your best, realizing that your best does vary from day to day. Some days you're doing your best and you're king of the world, right? You're on top of it and everything's going wonderfully. Other days, maybe, if you've ever had the flu or been really sick, your best on that day might have been to get up, eat some soup, and go back to bed, because that's all you could do, So from day to day, our best is going to look a little bit different. Again, I think the good thing is every day is a new opportunity to do something good and to try and make something positive, make something work. And as long as we kind of keep that in perspective and give ourselves a break, I think we'll be okay. It'll give us a sense of satisfaction. Okay.
Yeah,
Any
so I have a, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I have a student comment. They realize it's important to take care of themselves. However, they feel guilty taking time or giving themselves a break, given that it feels that much more stressful to make good grades and do really well in their projects, given the competitiveness of the workforce.
Yeah.
So I think I would give this to Alan, but I think again, those thoughts are shared by a lot of students.
Yeah, absolutely are. They're shared so often that's why I'm talking about it. It's so common. You know, you might think you're the only one, but I hear it every day. And I know I've said it. I know it's counterintuitive, but you need to reboot your brain. You know, you need to be able to, you know, run down the block, walk around the block, do some push-ups, you know, and I know things are competitive and you've got a lot of studying to do. And you do have to stick to that, but you also need to, you know, give your brain that opportunity to come back to it fresh. And so sometimes that little bit of a break will benefit you more than just sitting there at your desk, continuing to read, continuing to study, and continuing to work on the project. It's a tough balance for sure, but definitely I'm glad you mentioned it. Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment. So it looks like some students used to, again, join up with people to kind of relieve some stress, looking for maybe different resources for different people to talk to. So I think, you know, speaking to that as far as the counseling center is definitely still available for different things. There's definitely a lot of mental health resources available even during all this time, still able to do appointments virtually. So Alan, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, that is good. The counseling center, they are still seeing students virtually, and maybe what you're dealing with doesn't rise to the level that they're going to have appointments with you one-on-one. I think they're still in process of trying to figure out if they're going to have any kind of groups, virtual groups, and what that might look like. But yeah, reaching out, seeing what's available online for any kind of mental health assistance, and just really trying your best to reach out to friends and talk with them and stay in contact. Because again, it could go on for a number of weeks. I think we're also getting quite a few emails from UTD about different opportunities. So keeping your eyes posted for that. I know we have a lot of seminars and such, and they're designed to help, but they're also designed to kind of get you out of your, you know, that routine a little bit and kind of assist you. But good question, Bethany. Okay. Let's see, next slide, please. Yeah, so I think we've kind of been answering them as we've gone along, but in case there were any, I know some people like to leave their questions to the end. So I'll give you a moment to type in any questions and see if there's anything that came up that we haven't really addressed.
I have a student asking, they've got several friends they feel like would really benefit from this presentation. Will they be able to access it later, and will it be recorded?
Let me see. I believe it is being recorded. I have a producer on here. If they could let me know if it's recorded, and because I think
this will be recorded, and okay. It'll be available through Handshake in the resources section. You can go there, and all of our recordings of these virtual presentations will be available there.
Perfect. So they just log on to the Career Center website and then resources button, and then from there, all these will be available. Great. Okay, good question. Thank you for asking so we could point that out. Any other questions have been popped up since?
Nothing else.
Okay. All right, next slide, please. Okay, just wanted to put up a little bit of information. we are still available. We're still here for virtual office hours, virtual resume lab hours, as well as appointments with your career consultants. And that is part of what we're here for, is if nothing else, to make an appointment and try to process through some of this information that's maybe really particular to you, real specific to you. And sometimes talking about those things out loud can really make a difference with somebody, as opposed to just being in your own head and trying to figure it out, which oftentimes doesn't work real well. So we're still here, and there's an email address on the bottom. Any questions, careercenter@utdallas.edu. But again, there's appointments available. So logging into Handshake and making an appointment, definitely we are here to assist. Okay, next slide. Okay, just wanted to say again, thank you for everyone attending. And before we sign off, any last minute questions that have come up in the chat room?
No more at this time.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you attending. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.